who has 2 or 3 nice players, but their contracts extend more than a year into the future. And because they're simply nice players and the team has no other star, right, doesn't have a real superstar, that team is kind of stuck. They can't advance. Because you could trade Westbrook, I imagine, for a couple or 3 guys like that, because that way that team dealing you the other guys gets out of their contracts. Westbrook, especially if you're talking about the trade deadline. I asked Bontemps about this on This Just In yesterday. And on ESPN, I don't know if you heard about it. It's a show I host, Jay. I try to get you on. You're very hard to book.
I am for you.
And yeah, that's right, for me. Only for me, special for me. He's heard enough of me by the time that show rolls around. And he said, look, it's hard to find enough guys who make enough money to match Westbrook's contract. But maybe Indiana would be a trade partner. Listen to Adrian Wojnarowski, because he agrees with you on Get Up yesterday, Jay.
There's more out there for them than just Kyrie Irving. They have Eric Gordon, who certainly brings shooting, Buddy Hield from the Pacers. Those are 2 players they've talked about, both former Rob Pelinka clients from his agent days. And I still think there are other scenarios out there that maybe aren't, they're certainly not the level. There aren't many Kyrie Irvings out there, and they're certainly not available in trades. What the Lakers are trying to avoid is just absolutely mortgaging all of their future.
You know what's really interesting, Max? Again, from somebody that's been around a lot of GMs, from somebody that's thought about, do I want to be a president of an NBA franchise? The relationships that agents have had, right, with players and what agency you're represented by really matters. I had no idea until I hear Woj say that Rob Pelinka also worked with Eric Gordon and Buddy Hield from his agenting days. We talk a lot about Tibbs and that relationship with CAA and Leon Rose and how a lot of the foundation of the Knicks that they're building are built into CAA-like clients. We see that with Clutch Sports and Rich Paul and LeBron James and those type of relationships.
And Kentucky players. CAA and Kentucky players.
Yeah, I mean, so, but one last tidbit on this that I think is fascinating is that the 2 players that we keep talking about potentially being moved on different coasts, from Russell Westbrook to Kyrie Irving, they both signed 1-year deals. Like, they're on 1 year. Like, Russ has opted into his contract, right? That $47 million. And you're saying it can be used as something that can come off the books. Kyrie has opted into that last year of his deal, right? Because
what were their options?
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing, right? How they handle this year coming up will give a lot of insight to a lot of franchises on whether they want to take that risk for what they're going to ask for moving forward.
You know what's interesting?
So we feel like we're at an inflection point for both players that are extremely talented, and they're different talent levels, right? But they're extremely talented. But where they fit and their willingness to buy into what the team is trying to achieve, a lot has to be said about how they handle this upcoming year.
What's interesting about what you're saying to me is that Kyrie, if you want to handicap who's going to handle it better, right? Who's going to come out of this better? Kyrie shoots better. Like, forget about the handles and everything else. Like,
Kyrie's more talented.
And Kyrie shoots the ball. And by the way, Westbrook's won an MVP. Kyrie has not. Well, Westbrook got the MVP that year, didn't he?
Yeah, he's won an MVP.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember. Did he come in first or second? No, he won the MVP. Kyrie's never done that. But Kyrie can shoot. And if you can shoot, that will travel. Like, that, people will like that. On the other hand, Westbrook gives you everything he has. If he can, he's going to be there. Whereas Kyrie is the kind of dude where to me, it always feels like he's looking, and this might be an admirable characteristic in life, but maybe if you're looking for a franchise player, less so, because he might not be available. It's almost like he's looking for a cause greater than himself to attach himself to sacrifice for. And if you're a franchise, who do you want? The guy who is going to be there if he can be, which is Westbrook, or the guy who can shoot the ball, right? My guess would be the guy who can shoot the ball.
Yeah, but
Kyrie
Max,
will retain a lot of value.
I think the biggest thing for Kyrie this year, which is why you heard him opt in and say, hey, look, I want to be in Brooklyn regardless of whether Kevin Durant is there or not, is because
Brooklyn's like, no, we don't want you.
Well, there has to be a repairing of this reputation that is being built around him, right? And people, look, I think Kyrie Irving is a different cat. He leads differently, but there are some challenges that comes with his style of leadership.
Does he lead?
He leads in his eyes, right?
In your eyes, do you think he leads?
Not the way I would want my franchise led.
Yeah, I don't think.
Not the way I would want my franchise led.
I don't think he leads. Do you think players in order to lead, someone has to follow
I
you?
I think a lot of Jason Tatum followed him to a degree.
So did
Jason Tatum
KD actually to a degree.
So like because the talent speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And the talent is so profound that I try to often articulate this properly to people listening right now. I've never seen a talent like that. Like I talked to Coach K on my pod, The Limits, right, on NPR, and he was talking about how this dude has literally different check boxes on the backboard in which he practices different English of spins, like constantly, and can hit different aspects of the backboard and make the shot, just like the same way you practice, right?
Yeah,
but Max, basketball-wise, we have never seen something like that.
Right.
So a lot of players will naturally acquiesce to foul somebody like that. But we've seen a history of what happened with LeBron, what happened in Boston, and what happened in Brooklyn right now.
What you're talking about to me is not just talent. I will make a distinction between talent and skill. Talent is your capacity, and skill is how you hone that capacity, right? Talent, your level of talent is, some people have more than others, and if they both get the most out of it, the guy with the more talent will be better. But who is going to hone that talent into craft, that skill? And Kyrie, I've seen more talented guys who can jump higher, run faster, right? But the skill level of Kyrie, to be that talented and then hone his craft to the point where it's that precise.
Yeah, but Max, the operative word you said there was hone your talent into skill.
Darvin Ham has high expectations for the big three next season, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking AD, LeBron, and Russell Westbrook. And on the one hand, what choice do they have right now? There's no market for Westbrook, whatever. Maybe at the trade deadline, he's an expiring contract. But, Jay, when I look at them, no, they still don't have enough shooting. I get it. When I look at them, LeBron, he's not the undisputed best player in basketball anymore. Maybe it's someone else, but maybe it's still him. There is still an argument that he is the best player in basketball. You can make one. AD, when last seen, Jay, in the playoffs or in the when they made that deep finals run, when they won the chip in the bubble, went up against Jokic. He was clearly the better player. He's clearly better than Jokic in that series, clearly. So the real issue has been LeBron and AD haven't stayed on the court. If they could each play 60-plus games, which they haven't done in a while other than in the bubble, neither one's played over 50 in the 60s other than the bubble year for 5 years now, 4 years. Why can't they?
They can. So, Darvin, the reason why we're talking about the Lakers, because I know a lot of people are Lakered out, right? Because it's been the talk of the offseason, that and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It's because Darvin Ham went on All the Smoke, which is a show on Showtime led by Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, and talked a lot about the relationship he had with Russell Westbrook. And one of the things after listening to that, Max, that it really brought to my attention is that, a lot of times, first off, we're moving towards this age, and it's always kind of been that case with coaches like Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, George Karl, Rick Carlisle, guys who have played the game, that understand the nuances, that have also then coached at a high level. And I'm not saying that, look, a guy like Eric Spoelstra never played the game at a high level, but still has great connectivity. It can happen there too. But one of the advantages that Darvin Ham has that is different than what they had in their previous coach is that the relatability, right? There are two types of relationships. There's a transactional relationship for a lot of times where you come in as a head coach, Max, you don't really know me. We're playing, you're like, here are the plays. We're trying to get together. You're trying to build a relationship with me, but it's a little bit awkward because you don't understand how I move, nor have you really taken the time because there's a lot for you to handle as a head coach, right? You're dealing with your GM, you're dealing with your president, you're dealing with your owner, you're dealing with teams, players, all that stuff, right? So I'm not saying that Frank Vogel didn't try, but it felt more like a transactional relationship. And you saw that in the way LeBron and statements about him coaching or things about AD or the way Russell felt about Frank Vogel, where Darvin Ham seems to have a little bit more of an approach that this is going to be a transformational relationship where he's spending time with Russell Westbrook, going out to dinner right? Texting him, having multiple conversations with him outside of the practice facility. Same with Bron, same with AD. There's a relationship that is there. And when there's a relationship from a coach to a player, it's the same thing with, like, corporations. If you don't know who your boss is, you don't really care. You're going to come in, you're going to do minimum work, right? Unless you have a crazy sense of pride, and you're going to check in, you're going to check out. But if your boss takes the time to know a little bit about you, all of a sudden you're not willing to let your boss down, because now you're in
it together.
You're in it together.
Now, here's the question, because this has always been with guys who played recently, especially, and this is the case in baseball forever. And how do you thread that needle as a coach? And maybe you don't know because you haven't been a coach on that level, right? How do you thread
I've been
the
around
needle?
enough.
But you've been around them. How do they thread that needle? Where on the one hand there's that relatability and everything, but on the other hand they're the coach. Like, let me give you an example.
Oh, I can be extremely relatable to you, but there's a line in the sand.
But let me give you an example of a guy who I don't
Steve
know
Nash
if he's doing it. Steve Nash.
But
Steve
Steve
Nash
Nash has
won
had-
2 MVPs, but it doesn't feel like he has the gravitas as a coach, at least from where I'm sitting.
But he's barely had any coaching experience overall. Which is one of the main reasons
That's why you
of concern.
That's why you got to pay your dues.
You got to pay your dues.
Yeah. In the ranks.
Ime
Move up the ranks.
Udoka has paid his dues. Steve Kerr has paid his dues.
Darvin Ham.
Jason Kidd has paid his dues. Darvin Ham has paid his dues. He's worked with Giannis. He's worked with the bigs over in Milwaukee. He spent time with the Lakers before. Like, there's been a history there of learning how to say, hey, there's a balance, right? Come in close, but now that you're close, hey, stay over there, because there's a line. And you have to understand there's a standard here that I expect. And I don't care who the hell you are. If you're not willing to abide by my rules, don't be on my team. But I love you and I care about you, but there's a delicate balance on how you go about that. I don't think Frank Vogel had that with LeBron James, AD, and Russ.
I think it's not only going through. I'm now, like, forget about Vogel for a second. I'm talking about guys who've played recently and are now coaching, or relatively recently, where there's some overlap between guys in the league now and them.
Willie Green, I'll give you another one with the Pelicans.
So there's one, what you said, experience. There's no substitute for experience, right? And paying your dues and learning how to thread that needle and be their friend, but also it's not a peer relationship. They are the coach. But it's also, I think, it puts a little distance between the player and the league, right? Like, it's tough for a guy who, a young, inexperienced coach who also played with some of